Now that we've gotten an overview of CSS and given a broader context about where it came from and the role it plays in the modern web, let's take a look at a concrete example. We're going to start with the sample site that we'll be developing throughout the rest of this tutorial. We'll begin by making a directory for our sample application. Let's take a look at this here. Use the make directory command with the -p flag. This is something that was covered in Learn Enough HTML to be dangerous and Learn Enough Get to be dangerous. So these steps, if they don't look familiar, are the kind of thing that you can review in those tutorials. So we'll start with make your -p. What this does is it creates any intermediate directories as necessary. In particular, I'm going to use a repositories or repos directory. If you don't have this, then this command will automatically create it.
Also,
And
you can pronounce
yeah,
that as repos.
yeah, people do say repos. In fact, you probably should say repos. I don't know why I say
Just
repos.
wanted to throw that in there, Michael.
I'm a little idiosyncratic. Yeah, I should restandardize on that because it's repositories, but people do say repos, and
Repos.
I ought to as well. Okay, so make sure -p repos / and then we're going to use a directory name with the basically the full address of the site we're going to make. So it's going to be like this. Let me show you the end of it. It's going to live at GitHub Pages, which by default is at github.io, and then there's a username at the beginning of it. So in the case of Lee's username, what's your username again, Lee?
It's Anjin, which
Ah,
I took from the classic James Clavell novel Shogun. Don't ask why. In college I read it and liked the book, and it was early on in the internet when it was nice to have a short username, so I started using it in a bunch of places and to play Counter-Strike online, and just kind of stuck with it. And I signed up for GitHub, and there it is.
right. So this is what Lee would do. He would do engine.github.io. My GitHub username is mhartle. And this is the kind of thing where you'll just have to customize it based on your GitHub username. And what this is basically the root directory for your GitHub pages. And the reason we're doing it like this, even though you can serve GitHub pages out of a subdirectory, is in order to get all of the file inclusion to work later on in the tutorial. In real life, if you wanted to do this kind of website, you would probably want to use a custom domain, which would let you use a subdirectory. So something like example.com, and that's a separate tutorial. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to use this default GitHub Pages URL. So it's kind of unusual actually to have this the dots in a directory, but this is what it looks like. And then I want to CD into it. See where I am. Okay, so the first step in making a website is to make an index.html page, something that's covered in Learn Enough HTML to be dangerous. And my favorite way to do this is with the touch command. And then you can open this in your favorite text editor. I'll use Sublime. And then open it up. Right, so it's blank by default. Touch just creates an empty index file. And in order to get started here, we're going to just have you copy and paste an initial HTML file. So we're assuming at this point that you basically know HTML. And this is not the kind of thing that you want to type in. It's too much of a pain. So let's just copy this, paste it in, and I'll make it a little smaller. Save it, and then let's take a look at it. There are various ways to open HTML files, and my favorite in OS 10, or I guess it's Mac OS now, my favorite in Mac OS is to just use the open command. In this case, it'll use Safari, which is the default browser on this system. You can also do something like this. If you open dot, this will open the directory. And if you double click on it, oops, like this, there we go, that does the same thing. Figuring out how to do that sort of thing is a classic hallmark of technical sophistication, just being able to figure out how to open an HTML file on your system. There is one other example, though, I want to show you that's a little tricky if you're using the Cloud IDE. This is the sort of thing you ought to be able to figure out, but just for those who are using the Cloud IDE, it might take you a bit to get all the details, so I just want to make it a little easier. So we can open this up here, the text editor, and I'm just going to paste in the same thing. So if you're using the Cloud IDE, you want to run right here, and that starts up this web browser, and then you can click on this here, and then say open, and there it is.
So it might not look like much right now, but we'll be taking this initial page, which is pretty ugly, and adding
Yeah.
to it and manipulating it and changing it to get to something that actually looks pretty nice.
Right. And because this tutorial emphasizes good development practices, in particular deploying as early as possible, and also making sure to track our changes, we're going to put this project under version control with Git right away. So let's do that. These are the sort of steps that should be familiar to you if you've followed Learn Enough Git to be dangerous and Learn Enough HTML to be dangerous. But it's always good to review. So we're going to initialize the repository, get init, add all the files. In this case, there's just one file, but this way you don't have to think about it. And then we'll make our commit message. And now to put this on the remote repository and serve it up as GitHub pages, we need to create a repo at GitHub. Let's do that. New repository, and the name is just your username, github.io, and then we can put it in a description. I'll just say a sample website. And you can make it private if you want, if you have an account that allows private repos, but this is the sort of thing that it's perfectly fine to make it public. It's a website, so pretty much everything is already going to be publicly available anyway. So let's create it. And now I'll do this. I'll do git remote add this here. And I am going to push it up the way we normally would. So that's this here. Let's just do it. Copy it and paste it. So this is pushes dash upstream, origin master, origin, there is GitHub in this case, and then master is the branch. But since we're going to be serving this from GitHub pages, we're actually going to be working on the default branch for pages, which is called GH pages. So let's check out a new branch. Git checkout -b, GH pages, and then push that up as well. Just for completeness, let's double check that that worked. Go to the URL is username.github. And there it is. You'll note, actually, I didn't need to include index.html. It's served up by default, but it should work anyway. There we go. So you can
Our
see
beautiful
it's the
test page.
same thing. Yeah, this wonderful test page. It's a good way to start, though.